Hey, so it looks like we're just waiting on Ken to arrive. As usual. Never here when you need him.
Typical behavior.
Yeah. Typical for our representative, never to be around. Oh, look at that. It looks like Ken's showing up finally. Nice of you to join us.
Good to be here. Good to be here, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Am I late?
You're just 28 years late.
Oh, that's nothing.
It's nothing.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our long-awaited debate between Republican incumbent Ken Calvert and Democratic challenger Liam O'Mara. This debate has been 28 years in the making, and we look forward to hearing more about the candidates' vision for the 42nd District. Both candidates will have a moment to introduce themselves and give us a sense of where they're coming from. Then we'll get into a handful of important questions. Since you're our incumbent congressman, you can go first and say hello to our audience.
Hello, my loyal subjects. Joe Biden and the radical left, which includes my liberal opponent, Liam O'Mara, if that is his real name, would impose unprecedented government control over your lives and crush freedoms along the way. We can't let them ruin our country with their socialist policies, including taking away health care plans that families depend on when they're sick. If Democrats win, they'll raise your taxes and throw the brakes on this thriving economy that we have right now. I've been here in Congress since 1993, and I know all the tricks. Believe me, all the tricks. Your choice in November is clear. Support me. Sure, I'm from the so-called swamp, but I don't stink half as bad as our crazy, socialist, anarchist terrorist here. Thank you.
Well, unlike our incumbent, I'm not a millionaire. I come from a working class family and didn't go to college till I was 30 years old. As a historian, I know how and why our economy isn't working for ordinary people. And it's certainly not great now, Ken. And there is nothing socialist about doing what every other rich country does for its citizens. Our living standards have been falling for decades because of Ken Calvert's policies and his unwillingness to stand up for our communities. I'm running to let you keep more of the money you earn and to guarantee the best health care possible for your families. I'm running to expand our freedoms while Ken has been taking them away for ages with his big brother policies.
I see. How will you tackle the question of police brutality and systematic racism in the criminal justice system? Ken, you can again go first.
It's shocking that this is even a debate. But that's where we are with the unhinged left, aren't we? If you destroy property, you should be annihilated. Arrested. Sorry. If you set fire to a building, you should go to jail. These are acts of criminals, not protesters. Why would anyone protest anything anyways? Protesting is as un-American as you can get. Everything was perfect in my America before they started burning things. My opponent, Liam O'Mara, supports these anarchists and would invite chaos into our communities. I reject the calls of Democrats, including my opponent, to defund the police and reduce the number of heavily armed officers in our streets. Far too many cities across America are falling prey to violence and chaos in their streets. I, Ken Calvert, will stand with our law enforcement officers to maintain law and order. And we all know what that means. Because we can't afford to let mayhem spread beyond Portland, Seattle, DC, and Kenosha into our sweet suburban neighborhoods. I'm going to keep fighting against anti-police radicals and will support vigilante shooters who want to protect the police and Americans like you from those people. If you care about upholding the rule of law, you'll have a clear choice in this election.
Wow, okay, so to call that answer dishonest doesn't even come close to the reality. And somehow, my opponent managed to avoid the question entirely. Unlike Ken, I will never shy away from complex issues and will answer honestly. Regarding criminal acts taking place during protests, Those are already illegal and will be prosecuted. But the actions of an arsonist do not wipe out the cries for help from countless thousands who have gathered in over 3,000 American towns and cities to demand reforms. I have not, as my opponent keeps saying, called to defund the police, but rather for the social improvements which would lower crime more effectively, and for spending on other types of first responders so that police are not sent into situations for which they're generally ill-equipped. In doing so, I have echoed the arguments of police chiefs themselves all across the country. I would also like to see an end to qualified immunity, which there is bipartisan support for, and improvements in training. Other rich countries require 2 and 3 years of training to become a police officer. We require less than 1. Departments that teach de-escalation techniques make huge improvements in community relations. And so why not make that the norm? I mean, finally, I really want to see fewer people encounter police in the first place, because, I mean, we really have to address the thorny question of sentencing reform and cut down on like prison terms for nonviolent offenders. We have huge numbers of actual victimless crimes. I am, for example, as Ken has even pointed out, for legalizing drugs, because it is a lot more effective in solving the problem if we treat it like a medical issue. The United States has 4% of the world's population, but a quarter of its prison population, more than China, India, and Indonesia combined. Ken wants to lock up more people than totalitarian China. I do not.
Thank you for that answer.
Drugs? Don't get me started on drugs. My goodness. A drug, oh my.
Okay, Mr. Ken, it's my turn as the moderator. Thank you. We've seen the weakness of our healthcare system during this pandemic. Would you say change is needed for national healthcare? And if so, what is your plan? We will start again with you, Ken.
Sure. I supported the return of infected people from Wuhan through a commercial airport in Ontario. But since then, I've done as little as possible to protect people. Promise. It's much more important to protect the president anyways. And 200,000 dead is nothing. If you need more protection from the pandemic, just take unpaid time off from work and hide out in your Newport Beach mansion. It always worked for me. On healthcare, even if you like your company's plan, the radical left Democrats like Liam O'Mara will kick you off of it and force you to wait for treatments in government-run healthcare clinics like in Venezuela. And raise your taxes to pay for it, too. They also want anyone who crosses our borders to have instant access to the same care. So they'd be in line waiting for a doctor or surgery along with you. President Trump said in 2016 that he would replace Obamacare with something better and cheaper that would cover everyone. Since then, our amazing GOP has tried again and again to kick people off of Obamacare. We've suggested no replacement for it, but I'm sure that if voters keep believing what we say and not what we do, then maybe someday we'll get a new approach to healthcare by magic. Yes, you heard me, folks. Miracles do exist.
Exactly. So this administration completely bungled the pandemic response, and Ken has been going way out of his way to defend that broken response for months. It pains me to see that my representative has failed to issue the slightest criticism when more than 200,000 Americans have died due to sheer incompetence. The White House hid information from us, lied about the severity of the pandemic, and refused to order sensible preventive measures like, wearing masks, the kind of thing that actually stopped it in South Korea and Taiwan. This is the only reason California even had to shut businesses. The federal government's incompetence forced the states into blunt measures because Ken and his party could not protect us in a crisis. Now, speaking to the issue of healthcare more broadly, I want Americans to have the best healthcare on the planet. And while Ken likes to pretend that we have good care, the fact is we're at the bottom of the developed world. If you are wealthy, like the incumbent, or you get government-supported healthcare like our president just did at Walter Reed, you're going to get the best care in the world. For most Americans, it's actually comparable to the developing world. And for that, we pay twice as much as any European country does. We are the 35th healthiest population in the world with the 36th best child wellness. We deserve better for our money. What I propose would give most Americans an effective tax cut by greatly lowering their healthcare expenses and boosting their salaries. I want private healthcare provision with a thriving free market among doctors and hospitals because we would be able to go wherever we like. What I want is to break the tyranny of the insurance lobbies, breaking us out of those networks and letting you see the doctor that you want for the best price. Ken is lying about the costs, and I have the numbers to prove it. Our healthcare plan would cost half of what we are already paying, and we deserve the best plan in the world for what we have.
Cry me a river, princess.
Thank you, Mr. O'Mara. So how will you uphold the scientific consensus on climate change and with experts to mitigate the effects of global warming in the 42nd District? We'll start with you again, Ken.
Where to begin? Our district includes natural resources, like the Cleveland National Forest and the Santa Ana River. Oh, sweet, luscious natural resources. We need to find a balance between economic development and polluting industries and environmental protection. During my time in public service, we have taken the Inland Empire to the worst air quality in the country. Balance means letting businesses do what they want, and I will continue to work with them to find more balance. Our president says the scientists don't know anything about the climate, and who am I to contradict the president? He knows more than all the scientists. He said so. Otherwise, the scientists would be presidents, don't you think? Make no mistake. My opponent's plans would take a wrecking ball to our economy and make it even harder to recover. Even worse, the plan would trigger massive tax increases on working families and increase the cost of energy, food, and other consumer goods. The Green New Deal is just socialism disguised as environmentalism. They want to expand the size of the scope of government and make it do things for Americans. And we all know the reason for expanding government power is to spy or poison you. We can't afford to let AOC and Liam O'Mara hurt families with their radical leftist plans.
Wow. So, my opponent likes to lie about the Green New Deal and likes to call it socialism and likes to say it's about banning hamburgers and air conditioners and that it would raise our taxes and cost of living. All of this is nonsense and often the exact reverse. For one thing, does my opponent not even know what socialism means? Or is he just assuming that you don't know what it means? There's nothing in the Green New Deal that couldn't have passed under Richard Nixon or Dwight Eisenhower as presidents. And I doubt Ken would accept that the Republican Party used to be jam-packed with socialists. On the issue of global warming overall, we need to cut out the political BS and just listen to the scientists. When we politicize science, we risk grave mistakes. And for generations, American politicians had the courage to follow wherever the science led. Sadly, I think that Richard Nixon was the last Republican president who was willing to do so. Since then, we've had nothing but spineless lackeys like Calvert who do whatever their donors like. The key to understanding the Green New Deal is the New Deal part at the end of it. It's about putting Americans back to work, freeing our engineers and our scientists to innovate. I want us to invest in American workers and businesses again. Just think about what we accomplished back in the space race, in the Cold War. How much those new technologies changed our lives. I mean, how many of us have these in our pockets because of the investment in computers made during the space race? I want us to start dreaming again and reaching for the stars, and to remember that we accomplished all of that without raising taxes on ordinary Americans. We can do this, and we can solve the climate crisis if we only find the political courage to do so.
Thank you for that eloquent explanation, Mr. O'Mara. To our next question about money. Do you support a universal basic income or any other mechanisms for addressing the persistent poverty in the Inland Empire? Again, we go to you, Ken.
What? Giving money to people it's socialism. We need to give it to corporations instead. That's not socialism. It's the free market. I read about it on the internet. I support lowering the corporate tax rate and halting all job-killing regulatory proposals. Regulations kill jobs. Because who wants to be told that they can't injure workers or dump toxic waste? Not me. Leave a message. What we should be doing is cutting taxes for everyone and letting people keep more of their own money to spend how they like. And who cares if the pay stays low for most people? At least they can keep what little they make. And that's just the price of success for the rich. I would continue to cut taxes, like the death tax that's paid by 0.1% of Americans. That's crazy. Why should the top 10% have to pay anything on the billions they inherit? The proof is in the pudding. And I like second helpings, please. I voted for every tax cut, and look how that's helped my donors. Second helpings for them, too. Sure, there are many people in poverty in Riverside County, more now than when I was elected. But they should pull themselves by the bootstraps. Maybe, just maybe, there'll be some pudding left over. We need to give money to the job creators and trust them to let it trickle down on us. That's what I believe. Let the pudding trickle.
Oh, again with the trickle down stuff. I mean, we've had 40 years of experience to see that this does not work. And it is way, way past time that we put the American worker first and not the bottom line of a tiny class of corrupt oligarchs. Wages have been stagnant for 40 years while the cost of housing, healthcare, and education shoot ever higher for people. The result is crippling debt, limited opportunity to succeed or to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, rising inequality and desperation, and the death of the American dream. I think that we can do better. We don't need to accept 27th place in social mobility. We should all be able to succeed in this country. Past generations of politicians made things easier with sensible policies. They didn't whine and scapegoat and throw up barriers to success and then tell people to be satisfied with the crumbs that fall off the table. We need a new generation of leaders who are willing to, lead. Money in the hands of ordinary people, that is the real economy, not Wall Street profits. We built the middle class in this country back when Republicans understood that higher wages for workers meant more money spent and higher growth rates. That's the economy that we had in the 50s and 60s. When people like Ken and our president say they want to make America great again, oh, by all means, let's do that. I want higher taxes on the rich because they will lead to the higher wages for everyone else that we used to have. That's how this used to work. And I want a universal basic income so that we can abolish poverty once and for all. This was proposed by folks as different as Nixon and Martin Luther King, and it's way, way past time we did it. Ken has all of this backward. When the pandemic hit, the federal government should have passed wage subsidies immediately so that people could go to part-time or work from home or just stay home and not lose their jobs. We wouldn't have all the costs associated with the massive job loss we're dealing with now. These job losses, Calvert imposed those on us, and we have created the most unequal recession in modern history. We have a responsibility to make up for that damage. A basic income is the best tool for the job.
Thank you, Mr. O'Mara. We go on to our next question. Do you support efforts to combat the influence of big money in politics by reforming campaign finance laws? With you again, Ken.
I don't see the problem. The Supreme Court said that money is speech, all that money, all those millions I take from corporations are just me listening to my constituents. Lockheed Martin is my constituent. General Atomics and Sierra Nevada corporations are my constituents. I have to take their money. That's all I've got to say. That's how democracy works. And so what if I vote for every war or for cuts to regulations on corporations? They earn their money by exploiting Americans fair and square. It's my right to return a library book with page-damaging earmarks. And just the same, I'm happy to attach earmarks to bills and give these corporations money. That's how I got my fancy beach house. So I don't have to live in Corona and deal with those awfully strict librarians. I think the real threat is labor unions, and citizen advocacy lobbies. We should regulate them instead. Just because a union represents an actual voter shouldn't give them the right to give money to political campaigns. We need to leave our elections to the corporations and billionaires. They know what's best for us, and that's what they pay me for. If I could wink, I'd be winking.
Yeah, I don't accept any corporate PAC money because I want to represent the American people, not faceless corporate boardrooms. In Congress, I will be a crusader against exactly this kind of corruption. Heck, my opponent had to be investigated by the FBI because of dirty real estate deals. I mean, oh, wow. I mean, yeah, so maybe he wasn't charged with anything. I mean, but he has certainly played it up and denied it ever since. I mean, I'm sure it's all just a coincidence that his company and his friends' companies all made really fat profits from unimproved land right next to federal projects that, Ken, you knew they were coming. But,
Hey, I wasn't charged with anything.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Calvert, Mr. O'Mara, please, Dr. O'Mara, please go ahead.
So you got away with it, right? But whatever. We all know DC is a cesspool of lobbyists and corruption. Our incumbent has been tied to some of the worst, most criminal of those lobbyist corporations and has several times been ranked as one of the dirtiest politicians in Washington. For myself,
every day.
Yeah, I want all big money out of our politics. I want a total ban on cash lobbying and corporate contributions. In their place, I want public matching funds for private citizen donations. If you donate $10 to me, the government donates $50. And the only person then that I'm beholden to is the public, not to big, wealthy special interests. I want to represent voters. Being in Congress needs to be about public service again. Honestly, I agree with another right-wing slogan that this president keeps throwing around. Let's actually drain the swamp. Right now, it's filled with corrupt politicians and cash-soaked lobbyists. Let's fire them all and pass reforms needed to reclaim our democracy from the oligarchy that has swallowed it whole.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Mara. And to both of you, are there any endorsements or supporters for which you are most thankful? Ken, go right ahead.
I appreciate the generous contributions of Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Honeywell. Where would we be without all those cluster bombs? Pew, 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 pew. And of course, I would like to thank all the white nationalists who know that I am here to keep brown people out of your neighborhoods. Was that line vetted? Is that okay to say? Good, just checking.
Wow. Well, I am grateful for the support of local Democratic clubs and activists and for the many independent voters who know that I will always listen to their concerns whether we agree or not. And I appreciate all of the small donors who took money out of their tight budgets to support our push for real change and a real voice for the people of the 42nd District. I'm in this to stand up for people, and I'm grateful to have your support in doing so.
Oh, okay. It seems that we've learned a lot about our two candidates for Congress. Thank you both for being here. We have a few more minutes for closing statements now. Congressman, please.
How do I put this politely? Don't vote for Liam. He's evil. I tell you, he'll suck the blood and burn Riverside to the ground. You need me. Only I can save you from certain death. Pay no attention to my past or policies. They don't matter. Think only of how scared you are. He's got long hair. That means he's dangerous. He'll eat your children. Vote Calvert for the status quo because you're afraid of people who look different. And, law and order. Law and order. That's all I've got.
Well, unfortunately, it's not all I've got. I'm Liam O'Mara, and as you can see, I'm not scary. I'm in this because I feel a need to give back to my community. It's why that I teach for a living and why I volunteer, and it's why I honestly don't care what folks like Ken say about me. I'm in this because I can't stand by and watch the country that I love be driven into the ground. And I want our politics just to follow the evidence again. To be sensible, to look out for ordinary Americans. I want a new deal for the American people and an end to the corruption that our incumbent represents. If you, like me, care about freedom and the American dream, I humbly ask for your vote.
Thanks to both of you today. And I just have one last question for Ken, since he is our incumbent. How will you keep your promise to respond to the district that you live in?
Which district was that again?
Shouldn't you know that by now?
Sometimes I forget these things. Which district? Can you just help me out?
It starts with a 4.
41st. The 41st district. Well, you can rest assured that my loyal constituents in the 41st district can rely on me to be reliable and rely on them. Yes, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Reliable in never showing up to anything, but thank you for
Hey, I showed up to this, didn't I?
not representing the 42nd district.
Yes.
All right, 42nd. That's what it was.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that is a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you make the best choice for yourselves on November 3rd.
Woohoo! I trust that you will. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all never.